What happens when a prince who's spent years demanding respect walks into a studio where respect must be earned? In just 18 minutes of live television, Britain watched as one of its most famous faces transformed from composed royal to something far less dignified. It started with a simple question about family. It ended with security escorting a duke off the premises. The cream sofa of Good Morning Britain has hosted prime ministers, pop stars, and controversial figures of every stripe, but nothing could have prepared viewers for the moment. Prince Harry forgot that crowns don't come with immunity from accountability. By the time the cameras cut to commercial, Susanna Reid was standing her ground. Ed Balls was speechless, and millions of Britons were asking the same question. Did we really just see that happen? Before we dive into this explosive story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash that like. We bring you the most shocking celebrity moments every week, and trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we drop our next video. Now let's get into what really happened that morning. The familiar Good Morning Britain theme music swelled through the studio as the show went live. Susanna's warm smile filled millions of screens across the United Kingdom. Good morning, Britain. It's just gone 6:30, and we have an absolutely packed show for you today. But first, we're joined by a guest who needs no introduction, though he's certainly provided many of his own over the years. A ripple of knowing laughter passed through the crew. He's a prince, a podcast host, a memoirist, and one of the most talked about people in the world. Please welcome Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. The applause was polite but measured as Harry emerged from backstage. His smile was tight, controlled, the expression of someone who had already decided this would be an ordeal rather than a conversation. He settled into the guest chair across from Susanna and Ed, offering a brief nod of acknowledgement that somehow managed to feel like a concession rather than a greeting. "Harry, thank you so much for joining us this morning," Susanna began, her voice warm and welcoming. "We really appreciate you taking the time." "Well, I'm here," Harry replied, and there was something in his tone, a flatness perhaps, or a barely concealed impatience, that made the simple statement sound almost like a complaint. Ed jumped in smoothly. "Before we get into the serious stuff, how are you finding being back in the UK? It's been a while since you've spent significant time here." Harry's expression flickered with something that looked like irritation. "It's fine. London is London, though I have to say the weather hasn't improved since I left." It was meant to be light, perhaps even funny, but the delivery was so clipped that it landed awkwardly. Susanna and Ed exchanged the briefest of glances, the kind that experienced co-hosts share when they sense trouble brewing. "Well, we can't control the weather, unfortunately," Susanna said with a small laugh, trying to warm the atmosphere. "Now, you're here to talk about your charitable work, which we absolutely want to discuss, but I'd like to start with something that's been in the news recently. Your father's health has been a topic of much public concern. How is he doing?" The question was gentle, compassionate even. Any reasonable person would have recognized it as an opportunity to express concern for a parent, to show a human side that might generate sympathy. Harry's jaw tightened. "I'm not here to discuss my family's private health matters." "Of course I understand," Susanna said quickly. "I wasn't asking for medical details, just—" "Then why ask at all?" Harry interrupted, his voice sharpening. "You know I'm not going to discuss that. Everyone knows I'm not going to discuss that. So why waste both our time?" The directness of the rebuke seemed to surprise even the camera operators, who shifted slightly at their posts. Ed leaned forward, attempting to smooth things over. "I think Susanna was just expressing the concern that many viewers feel," he offered diplomatically. "Your father is the king, after all. People care about his well-being." Harry turned to look at Ed with an expression that bordered on contempt. "People care about headlines. That's what they care about. And shows like this feed that appetite while pretending to be concerned." Susanna's smile remained in place, but her eyes had taken on a cooler quality. "I can assure you, Harry, our concern is genuine. But let's move on. You mentioned you're here to discuss your charitable work. Tell us about the initiatives you've been focusing on." For a moment, Harry seemed to consider whether to continue being combative or to accept the olive branch. He chose a middle path, answering the question while making clear he was doing them a favor. "We've been doing important work around mental health awareness, particularly for veterans," he said, his tone suggesting that he was explaining something obvious to people who should already know. It's work that actually matters, unlike most of what passes for news coverage these days. That sounds wonderful, Susanna said, choosing to ignore the dig. Mental health for veterans is such a crucial issue. Can you tell us specifically what programs you've implemented? We've implemented several programs, Harry said vaguely. Programs that are making a real difference in people's lives. Not that you'd know about them, because the media only covers controversy, not substance. Ed tilted his head slightly. Well, we're asking about them now. This is your opportunity to share the substance. Harry's eyes narrowed. And I'm sure whatever I say will be twisted into something negative by tomorrow's papers. That's how it works, isn't it? I say something positive, you find a way to make it sound selfish or self-promoting. We're not the papers, Harry, Susanna pointed out gently. We're a morning television program. We're giving you a platform to share your work directly with millions of viewers. A platform, Harry repeated, and there was unmistakable sarcasm in his voice. Yes, that's what you call it. I call it a trap. You invite people on, you pretend to be interested, and then you ask loaded questions designed to create conflict. Susanna's patience was clearly being tested, but her professionalism held. I've asked you about your father's health, because people genuinely care, and about your charitable work. Neither of those seems particularly loaded to me. The first question was about my father, Harry shot back. Not about my work. Your priority was gossip, not substance. That tells me everything I need to know about what this interview is really about. Ed shifted in his seat, his political instincts kicking in. Harry, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Let's reset. Tell us about a specific moment in your charitable work that you're particularly proud of. A story that illustrates why this matters to you. It was a perfect softball question, the kind that any media-trained person would recognize as a gift, an opportunity to share something meaningful, to connect with the audience, to demonstrate the passion behind the work. Harry looked at Ed as if he'd been asked to perform a trick. I'm not here to audition for your approval. My work speaks for itself. If people want to know about it, they can look it up. But Harry, Susanna pressed, her frustration beginning to show despite her best efforts. You came on this program. You agreed to this interview. Presumably you wanted to communicate something to our viewers. We're trying to help you do that. Are you? Harry's voice rose slightly. Because it feels more like you're trying to get me to say something that can be turned into a headline. Harry slams family. Harry defends controversial charity. Whatever angle you're looking for, I'm not going to give it to you. We're not looking for any angle, Susanna insisted. We're looking for a conversation. That's what interviews are. Conversations. Harry laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Conversations. Right. That's what you call it when you put someone in a chair, point cameras at them, and ask questions designed to provoke reactions. In the real world, we call that an interrogation. The word hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Susanna's expression shifted, still professional, but now with an unmistakable edge of steel. No one is interrogating you, Harry. You're a guest on our program. You're free to answer questions however you like, or not answer them at all. But I'd ask you to extend us the same courtesy of good faith that we're extending to you. Good faith? Harry scoffed. Where was the good faith when your colleagues camped outside my home? Where was the good faith when they published private photos of my children? Where was the good faith when they printed lie after lie about my wife? I understand you've had difficult experiences with the press, Susanna said, her voice measured. Many of those experiences were genuinely terrible, and I'm not defending them. But I'm not the photographer who followed you home. I'm not the editor who approved invasive stories. I'm a journalist trying to have a professional conversation with you this morning. You're all part of the same machine, Harry declared, waving his hand dismissively. You might not hold the camera, but you benefit from the pictures. You might not write the headlines, but you read them on air and pretend to be shocked. Ed decided to try a different approach. Harry, let me ask you something directly. What would make this a good interview for you? What do you actually want to communicate to the people watching? Harry turned to Ed with an expression of barely concealed contempt. What I want is to be treated like a human being instead of a content source. What I want is for people to actually listen to what I'm saying instead of waiting for me to slip up. What I want, he paused, his voice rising, is for just once, someone in the British media to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I'm not the villain you've all decided I am. No one here has called you a villain, Susanna pointed out. You don't have to say the words. It's in every question, every raised eyebrow, every carefully neutral tone that's really just judgment wrapped in professionalism. Susanna leaned forward slightly. Harry, I've been nothing but respectful to you since you sat down. I've asked about your father because people care about him. I've asked about your work because you said that's why you're here. If you're hearing judgment in my questions, I'd suggest that might say more about your expectations than about my intentions. The observation was sharp but fair, the kind of pushback that any experienced journalist would offer to a guest who was being unreasonable. But Harry's face darkened as if she'd delivered a personal insult. Don't psychoanalyze me, he said coldly. You're not qualified. I'm not psychoanalyzing you. I'm responding to what you're actually saying and doing in this interview. That's called having a conversation. No, what you're doing is trying to make me look bad so you have something to talk about for the rest of your show. Prince Harry loses it on Good Morning Britain. I can already see the Chiron. Ed held up his hands. Harry, I promise you, no one wants that. We want a good interview. We want you to be able to share your perspective, but you have to meet us halfway here. Meet you halfway? Harry's voice rose to something approaching a shout. I've spent my entire life meeting people halfway. I've smiled when I wanted to scream. I've shaken hands with people who'd written terrible things about my family. I've played the game, followed the rules, done everything that was expected of me. And what did it get me? More scrutiny, more lies, more demands that I perform for a public that sees me as entertainment rather than a person. Susanna remained calm, though her voice had taken on a firmer quality. I hear your frustration. I do. But, Harry, you're currently shouting at two people who have been nothing but courteous to you. We're not the people who wronged you. We're not the photographers or the tabloid editors. We're television presenters trying to do our jobs. Your jobs, Harry spat. Your jobs are to extract content from people and package it for consumption. Don't pretend it's anything more noble than that. And your job, apparently, is to agree to interviews and then complain about being interviewed, Susanna shot back, her patience finally reaching its limit. You signed contracts with Netflix, Spotify, and publishers to share your story. You've done more media appearances in the last 3 years than most celebrities do in a decade. And yet, every time someone asks you a question, you act like you're being persecuted. The directness of the response seemed to stun Harry momentarily. He wasn't used to being challenged, not like this, not on live television, not by someone who wasn't backing down. That's different, he said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. How is it different? Susanna pressed. Explain it to me. You've sold your story for millions of pounds. You've shared intimate details about your family, your childhood, your relationships. You've made your private life into a commercial product. And now, you're sitting here complaining that people want to discuss it? I'm controlling my own narrative, Harry insisted. There's a difference between choosing to share something and having it stolen from you. But we're not stealing anything. We're asking you questions you're free to answer or not answer. The only person forcing you to be here is you. Harry stood up abruptly, the sudden movement causing a ripple of alarm through the studio. Ed rose halfway from his seat, unsure whether he should intervene. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who makes a living off other people's pain, Harry declared, pointing at Susanna. I make a living off informing the public, Susanna replied, standing herself now. I've spent over 2 decades building a career on asking fair questions and treating people with respect. I've done nothing but extend that same courtesy to you this morning, and you've responded with hostility from the moment you sat down. Hostility? Harry laughed bitterly. You want to see hostility? Hostility is having your mother chased through a tunnel by photographers. Hostility is watching your wife be called every racist name imaginable by the British press. Hostility is being told that your mental health struggles don't matter because you were born into privilege. All of that is terrible, Susanna acknowledged, her voice softening slightly. And I mean that sincerely. What happened to your mother was a tragedy that changed journalism ethics in this country. The racist coverage of your wife was despicable and indefensible. Your mental health matters just as much as anyone else's. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. But none of that excuses how you've behaved in the last 15 minutes. You've insulted me, dismissed my colleague, and treated this entire interview as if we were your enemies. We weren't. We were trying to give you a fair platform, and you've made that impossible." Harry's face contorted with something that looked like rage mixed with disbelief. "A fair platform? Is that what you call this? Ambushing me with questions about my family? I asked one question about your father's health, one, and you've spent the entire interview since then attacking us for it. Because it was inappropriate. Then you could have said so and moved on. Instead, you chose to interpret it as evidence of a conspiracy against you. Harry, not everyone is out to get you. Sometimes a question is just a question." Ed, who had remained mostly silent during the escalating conflict, finally spoke up. "Harry, I think we should all take a breath here. Maybe we can—" "I'm done taking breaths," Harry interrupted savagely. "I'm done being told to calm down by people who have no idea what my life is like. You sit there in your comfortable chairs, asking your safe questions, and you think you understand anything about pressure, about persecution, about what it's like to have your entire existence picked apart by strangers? We're not claiming to understand everything about your life," Ed replied calmly. "But we do understand professional conduct, and what you're displaying right now, isn't it?" Harry turned on Ed with sudden venom. "Professional conduct? From the man who kicked a lobbyist on live television? Please." It was a low blow, a reference to an embarrassing incident from years ago that Ed had long since apologized for and moved past. The cruelty of the remark was evident to everyone watching. "That was different," Ed said quietly, his face showing the sting of the comment. "And I apologized for it, publicly and sincerely. I took responsibility." "How nice for you," Harry sneered. "Some of us don't have the luxury of apologizing and moving on. Some of us have to carry every mistake, every misstep, every bad day for the rest of our lives." "That's your choice," Susanna interjected firmly. "You choose to carry it. You choose to bring it up in every interview. You choose to make it the center of your identity. The press may have done terrible things to you, but you're the one who's decided that victimhood is your permanent state." The accusation landed like a slap. Harry's face went pale, then flushed red. "How dare you!" he whispered, his voice trembling with fury. "How dare you sit there and tell me I'm choosing to be a victim? I'm not saying you weren't victimized. I'm saying you've built an entire brand around it. There's a difference. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. Sit down, have a civil conversation, and explain your perspective. That's all we've been asking for this entire interview." Harry looked at the chair he'd abandoned, then back at Susanna. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually comply, might take the opportunity to reset, to salvage something from the wreckage of the interview. But then his expression hardened into something cold and final. "I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe anyone in this country an explanation. I tried to do my duty. I tried to serve. And all I got in return was cruelty and betrayal. So, no, Susanna, I'm not going to sit down and explain myself to you. Not today, not ever." "Then I think this interview is over," Susanna said quietly. "Yes, it is, and trust me. You'll be hearing from my lawyers about how this was conducted." The threat was meant to intimidate, but Susanna didn't flinch. "Our lawyers are available any time. We've recorded everything. Every question I asked was fair, and any objective viewer will see that." Harry gathered himself, straightening his jacket with sharp, angry movements. "Objective viewers. In Britain. That's a laugh. You've all made up your minds about me. Nothing I say will ever change that. You've done nothing but confirm people's worst assumptions since you sat down," Susanna replied, her voice sad more than angry now. "I genuinely hoped this would be different. I thought maybe, in person, away from the tabloids and the headlines, we could have a real conversation. I was clearly wrong." Harry paused at the edge of the set, turning back to deliver one final salvo. "You know what your problem is, Susanna? You think you're one of the good ones. You think because you smile and use a polite tone, you're somehow better than the tabloid journalists. But you're not. You're all the same. You all feed off the same beast. And you think that because you were born a prince, normal rules don't apply to you," Susanna responded. "That everyone should tiptoe around your feelings while you trample over everyone else's? But that's not how respect works, Harry. Respect is earned, not inherited." The words struck home. Harry's face contorted with an emotion that looked almost like pain before hardening back into anger. "Goodbye, Susanna. Enjoy your ratings boost." And with that, he turned and walked off the set, his his footsteps echoing through the suddenly silent studio. For a long moment, no one spoke. The cameras continued rolling, capturing the empty guest chair, the shell-shocked expressions on Susanna and Ed's faces, the stunned stillness of the crew. Then Susanna took a breath, smoothed her jacket, and turned back to the camera with the professionalism that had defined her career. "Well," she said, and there was the slightest tremor in her voice that she couldn't quite hide. "That didn't go quite as we'd planned. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the weather with Laura, and we'll be talking about the government's new housing initiative." The familiar transition music played as the show cut to commercial. Off camera, Ed turned to Susanna. "Are you okay?" Susanna nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. "I'm fine. That was just a lot." "You handled it brilliantly," Ed said quietly. "Every question you asked was fair. He was completely out of order." "I know. She paused, gathering herself. "I really did hope it would be different. I thought maybe, if we approached him with genuine respect, he'd respond in kind." "Some people can't accept respect," Ed observed. "They're so convinced the world is against them that they turn every interaction into evidence of persecution." A producer rushed over, tablet in hand. "Susanna, social media is going absolutely mental. The clips are already everywhere." "I'm sure they are," Susanna said wearily. "I'm sure Harry's team is already drafting a statement about how he was ambushed and mistreated." "Actually," the producer said, scrolling through her tablet, "the reaction is overwhelmingly in your favor. People are saying you gave him every chance and he threw it back in your face." Susanna nodded, but there was no satisfaction in her expression. "That doesn't make me feel better. I don't want to win against Prince Harry. I wanted to have a good interview that informed our viewers. Instead, we got that." The commercial break ended, and Susanna and Ed slipped back into their professional personas with the ease of long practice. They continued through the rest of the show, weather, politics, a heartwarming segment about a local charity, as if nothing had happened, but everyone watching knew what they had witnessed, and they wouldn't forget it. What do you think? Was Susanna right to push back, or should she have handled it differently? Did Harry have legitimate grievances, or was he completely out of line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video to help it reach more people. Subscribe to our channel for more explosive celebrity moments.